Well, 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 look who's back. It's your boy ready to look at your Depop stores with a twist. Now the twist is I actually have websites as well. So if you guys want me to review your Vintage, your eBay, your Shopify store, wherever you sell on, feel free to just drop it down below. I've had honestly so many been sent in every single day on all the different platforms. So each time I'm gonna try and do around 6 to 8 and just keep it concise and clean. So without further ado, let's get to number 1. Shouts to Wear Fino. I like the name, interesting placement. Hang on. In the first shot right there, did we all think at the same time that it's a crop jacket and then we looked and was like, oh, okay, there's an extension. I would say that the first photo you use should always be the item as clearly as it actually is, because it just helps when it comes down to actually selling the product. So it's just good mindful practice. Also, centralization is definitely perfect and more optimum for the first photos that you do. Look at the natural light in there. You can see every single crease. That's the other thing about natural lighting as well, is if your items aren't pressed, you have to be cautious of the way that the item will actually look. I actually don't think there's that many creases. I think that jacket is beautiful. I will put my address down below so you can send it to me. That looks great. And I think that it's really good what you've got there. I think this is an interesting point as well. The condition on a rating out of 10, grade A, B, and C goes with some people, but condition out of 10 is actually such a good way to get people to understand exactly what you mean straight away. Like 9 out of 10, you know it's basically as good to go as possible. Whereas if you'd put like 6 out of 10, you would probably message and go, what's wrong with it? Add your pit to pit and your back of neck to hem, so you've got those information bits there. 2 external pockets, 1 internal pocket for your iPod, camera, or phone. iPod. This listing is back in 2005 with this jacket. Shout out to the nanos out there. I think that what you're doing with this approach of testing different lighting and floors, definitely on cue with what I would have done. I think that the lighting is actually a lot better like this. Unfortunately, when you do photos like this, these would be images that I wouldn't use for actual product uploads, just because those that know about those streets know that they're outside, and those that are aware that this is outside will think, wow, you're throwing this clothing on the floor and I'm supposed to buy it at 42 euros. Just something to be mindful of. I think overall this store is really nice, worldwide sourced, finest curated, vintage, secondhand, and stuff. Take out the stuff. Just put vintage and secondhand worldwide. Just remove it, it'll help you out, I promise you. These are nice shots. The model looks great. That's a really nice perspective. I think you've got something good there. That's a beautiful jacket as well. Try and capture the natural outdoor light, but try and do it in places where you know people know that it's not an actual floor. That's why the industrial floor kind of sits in a good place, because people look at that and think it's indoors, but it might still be outdoors. Do you know what I mean? That is the best composition you've got so far, and it's perfect spacing in between on both sides. Next up, we have a website. The website is for Sustainable Closet Limited. This is a fellow Tilt person, so for those that are on Tilt, the live stream platform, go and watch that if you're interested. But this is a website review, so we're gonna still stick to the aesthetic side of things. I won't be able to go into too much of a deep dive on it. You can feel free to DM me. I'm filming a video. I really like the use of the phone on the placement and the sort of website. I think that's really cool. Really like it when you use editorial photos and use an actual model, because when you're selling brands like Stone Island, where the price tag is $320, there's some peace of mind people get, I feel like, from seeing a model actually wear it, or when it appears like you've put in the effort to invest in models, create a concept and something to represent your brand. I think that that's where you really sit in a good point. So the first bit of feedback I've got is that consistency with the photos is definitely to a different perfection for yourself, maybe. In all honesty, the best way for simplicity is to just go with consistency on the first photo, and you can kind of explore and be adventurous with the other images, because the first image is what everybody sees, but the second, third, and fourth is what people see that actually want to buy. The first image has got to be like the best presented version of what this product is. And if I'm being honest, that doesn't look great as a perspective. Go for centralizing the item. I can't tell if I love or hate this block idea that you're doing, and I think it sits in line a little bit with the theme that you've got with the sort of softer shapes on the homepage, to just like the mobile and desktop sort of way of viewing. Website feedback that I would say is work on getting the add to cart button a bit smaller. I think that the fact that it sits quite far away from the price and the title, but that title and price is smaller than that, almost suggests that you put more importance on people adding to the cart than them being aware of what the item is and the price is. So, you know, maybe explore A/B testing. So what you can do with Shopify stores is you can actually run 2 same themes and A/B test them to your audience. So if you get like X amount, say 100 people go on your website a day, I don't know, maybe you get 500, whatever, you can kind of A/B test and split it and create a different concept and see which one actually connects with customers better. My feedback on this would be to completely construct the shape thing. I think for me, it's a distraction. The most important thing to focus on first, the consistency of the images, placement in a nice centralized manner, titles being bigger, price being more of an important factor. Work on the add to cart button maybe being a little bit smaller, maybe change the color of it. Another little tip, I'd go on the psychology psychology of colors, if you want to understand what colors people feel more receptive towards when they see it on websites. That's my feedback to you, Sustainable Closet, and I appreciate you for letting me look at your store. Next one, we got retro selling. This is someone from New Zealand. We love to see it. And another person that is embodying the outdoor photo. This is my type of floor. I just feel like that floor looks boiling. Am I the only one that thinks that that looks boiling? It looks like it's cooking. First things first, this is shocking, bro. Classic Artex shirt, medium. There's no information there that would lead anybody to be curious by it. You're leaving all of the job and duty to the person who's looking at it to go, do I want this? Have I got any idea what the size would be? Do I even know this brand? Do I even know how they fit? Just add pit to pit and back and up to hem. Add a little bit of information about what this shirt is like. What's the material like? What does it actually sit like? What does it feel like? What's the condition? Let them know so they know. Otherwise, they don't know and you don't get sales. Also, when you're using natural light, I would say just be careful of where the creases are because natural light highlights the pure look of the product. So you just have to be mindful and also careful of that. I think that it's really good what you've done. I would say that from one personal aesthetic perspective, the items seem quite far away from where you're taking the photo. If people can see more in the first thumbnail when they scroll, they have less questions to ask whilst clicking. You imagine if I'm scrolling through loads of different products and I see your product zoomed out, but this t-shirt is exactly what I'm looking for, I might not even give it a second look because it's so far away. It needs to be like that. Tighter, because that t-shirt is banging. I would just say home in on the zoom in and magnifying of the actual product itself. Just get it a little bit tighter and make your descriptions better than Caribbean Cruise single stitch. That is what the title is for, not what the description is for, okay? Overall though, I think that what you do with the natural light, I'm a big fan of it. I think that it looks like you're experimenting different textures. Be careful with this. Be careful with different colors of background textures. Now we get really complex once we go into a bit more of a three-dimensional space with this. You've got darker gravel on one side and lighter on the other, albeit a really good look. I thought from looking from an outside perspective that that was just the sunlight and it was an aesthetic and a perspective. It can alter the way you look at things. If I showed you an item now and it was a red t-shirt but I had blue bits around the sides and little bits of green, you might be unsure with what that color of the t-shirt is, even though you can see it. The way that you place an item and contrast it in a better way to allow the item to have the oomph that you're trying to represent by even selling it, this just absorbs it a little bit too much with different contrasted textures in the background. I like that. That was just like a thought. Like, yeah, the very nice color. Next up, we've got Original Allure, and it's another website, and here we go. I would say as a personal preference, make sure that your banners at the top with what people click on are bigger than the thing that scrolls along the thing underneath it. The reason why is that these are the actual important parts you want people to click, and this is just information that's good for people to know. It should be more subliminal and feel like it's a background thought that's kind of like a little fly going zzz, like buy now, pay later. Zzz. But menswear, women's wear, the collections, they're big because that's what you're actually selling. End clothing, that's what I'm thinking right now. End clothing, that is clean. I'll be real, the photos there are banging. I think I understand the sort of perspective of a texture. It looks like you've gone from using a phone to using a camera on both of these. It may be the same, but just in a different capacity. Or these might be the photos that are here with the background removed. This looks shocking. I thought it was quite good to begin with, but the fuzz actually is distracting. And the more I look at it, the more I feel like you're a smaller store. Whereas with these shots, I feel like you're the Don Dada. Maybe think about whether you're actually gonna compromise doing both with the backgrounds on this one. The way that the perspective looks is amazing. This jacket looks great, but there's a slight different puff texture on this side than there is for that one. The arms just sit a little bit like awkward, and it is not exactly accurate where I can see the inseam of the arm to know how it's gonna fit on that one. Okay, that is one of the model shots from the website, I'm pretty sure, because there's no other images on that. Taking images off of different websites and using them as yours. Now, if Allure, that is what you have done, I am not going to comment on whether I think that's a good choice or not, but what I am going to tell you is that when you start to use images on different websites, you start to compromise your own aesthetic as you are using other things that have an aesthetic that's based on that brand. Now, it might be the brand that you're selling, just some sort of consideration in the background. Now, granted, it's being very smart and resourceful with the fact that you've got this product and you can use modeled photos. And if this is your model photography and I see another item now, then I'm gonna give you a round of applause because it looked flipping banging. This might be his own models, and if it is, bro, I'm a fan. I'm not a fan of this like carpet background, like, no. If so, I will say that there are websites where people do actually take the images off different websites and use them as their own. Let me know. I need to know if these are your photos because I'm liking them. If they're not, we're gonna have a different conversation, okay? But overall, mate, really good. I would just say make sure to maintain the consistency with the way that your products look through the aesthetic, assuming that you manage to maintain this kind of like look. Maybe have a little think about the carpet situation you've got in the background, and then just that little website one, I would say maybe just compromise the way that that looks. Make that smaller, make that bigger. Right, next up we've got H Streetwear. 434 sold with 200 feedbacks. Off the back foot, these felt like they were a little bit absorbed into the lighting. For the price that these are, I wanted these to pop a little bit more when I saw them. What we have to realize, especially if we start using cameras, is the way that the ISO and the aperture and the actual shutter work together really determines the way that the lighting is going to be affected. If you are using a mobile device or you are just taking photos on your iPhone or your Android, whatever, it is susceptible to the automatic setting that the phone has and the lighting that it manages to conjure up through the shot. These just felt a little bit absorbed in the background and the lighting. You'd benefit from another light. And I think having it in an angled position and perspective would create this artificial look that maybe you are or aren't going for. It gives an uplift. And I think that that's what these need. They need a little bit of an uplift because they're expensive brands. Like these look good because the item themselves is super vibrant and popping. These ones just feel a little bit like absorbed. You know, I have to look pretty close to see where the seam on the shorts are and does it have pockets? I'm not sure. Have you said it's got pockets? No, so I'm not sure. But you have put the measurements, so we have to look at the positives and that's good. I'm glad you put the measurements. I don't have a personal vendetta for people who don't, but if you don't do measurements, like, what are you doing? Maybe you've not done anything differently, but what I'm saying is the black items specifically, they just feel a little bit like not popping. Like I'm not excited to click it. The fact that you've got good information in the description makes me think that, you know, you take care of what you're doing. You can maybe like do a little bit of a specification on what used condition means because of the stigma people have around the word used. Used is negative the same way that secondhand is. However, I'm a big believer that secondhand is a very accurate way of explaining what something is, whereas used is almost like reinforcing the negative stigma of what people think about secondhand. Like used clothing, used condition. Just say pre-loved or used condition or what does used mean, and all items are secondhand, sourced sustainably, blah, blah, blah. Go with that kind of approach. I would say have a think about the used. Maybe it's the way that you need to maybe change the contrast of the background a little bit on the darker items. I just think that it could go with a little bit of a pop because these items, certain ones like the purples and the greens, they pop because they are popping colors, but you want the black items to pop with the same respect, even considering they're black items, if that makes sense. Next up, we've got Lem Vintage, and this is a Washington State with a Christmas tree. This is the hanging approach with what we haven't seen yet. One of the biggest things I don't like about this perspective, and I think the reason why most people do the flat lays is because this just looks like and I think it helps you to see the item stood up but flat in a sort of sense, work within your means and be practical with what the process is that you're doing. And obviously I can see quite a few like little bits of fur and flicks on there and stuff, so I would just say maybe have a little bit of a quality control on your products. Lint rollers are just fabulous things, especially for black items. I would advise using lint rollers because the contrast of the dust is normally the opposite color of the item when it's a black product. You want to get something that's just going to remove them so that it seems less obvious. Because the item is dark and the flicks of dust or whatever it is on the item are the opposite color, it just brings it to the surface where you don't really want that. Pit to pit and length, nice, nice, nice. I think that still pit to pit and length, just put pit to pit and back of neck to hem. There's no point in compromising a nice aesthetic or a nice appeared aesthetic when it practically needs to read exactly what it is so that people know exactly what it is. I think that overall this is a nice store. I like the fact that you're outdoors using it in the proper natural lighting. I think if you're able to, it's really good. The hanger isn't something that you can kind of control with doing photos like this, so I totally get it. I would say that maybe just work on the darker items where you've got potential specs and things that you need to like watch out for, because obviously when you're shooting right into natural light, you have to be aware of those faults and flaws. It might be simple and clear enough to most people in your eyes, but there's still a percentage of people that will have no clue what that means. I used to sell items with the size in the title and people would message me genuinely on the same product and go, hey mate, what size is this? When it says medium in the title. So with all respect to every single human being on the earth, don't underestimate what sort of stupid questions you can actually receive on your product. Overall though, have a little look at some different background perspectives. I think the shed sort of look is really cool with the soft blue, but you know, maybe have a little look at some different perspective. Lint roller if you're going to continue using in the same shot to shoot, and work on maybe having a little look at some variations of the description. Sam T God Vintage, here is the boy or the girl. Y2K and Vintage should just both be titled, bro. So just make that VTG titled and you save yourself. This is really cool. Ed Hardy on the T, we like that. The flooring is interesting. It makes me feel like it's on the top of like a pizza counter a little bit. The approach you're going for still caught my eye and I clicked it. Be careful with items like this. I think the way that you've done this is really nice, but you've got to remember that the front photo looking like this, maybe I won't click it because I just think it looks daft. Because you know when you see an item like that and it looks like that, you would be less inclined to buy it because you think, oh my goodness, what does this even look like on? If you're not going to use models, these photos have to be the clearest representation of what this item looks without it being on a model, because somebody has to look at it and go, I can visualize myself wearing that. I can visualize myself wearing this lampshade more than that item. Just genuinely because I know exactly how I'd put that on my head, whereas I have no idea how I'd put that on my body. And I think that you have to look at items like that. You have to look out of your aesthetic and your idea and go, is this the best way to represent this product? The background, I'm not really mad at it because it looks like you've been trying different backgrounds, and this one is a soft white. I really like that. That item looks very clear, it's clean, it's concise. You've used very good images for the close-ups. It looks like there's a little bit of a different sort of shade of light underneath, so I'm not sure if that is where you have cut the product out and had to do some sort of colouring in there, adjusting, I'm not sure. But overall, this is really nice. Good use of a lighting that you've got there that's shooting on the product. The wooden floor on the background, I'm not totally mad by it. You've got some sort of base to go with. Chest length arms, made in USA, shell and line, and no rips or stains, used, washed and wear. What does that mean? Used, wash and wear. I know what you're saying, it's used, take it home and clean it and it'll be good as new. But wash and wear sounds a bit mad. And the word used, I wouldn't use the word used to talk about secondhand, just because the way that that word sounds almost derogatory and almost sits simultaneously with the stigma of the secondhand. I think that used is like saying battered or rubbish. I think that you can work on better vocabulary for the example that you're trying to explain. Overall though, really good. I would have said like maybe have a little look at some different backgrounds. Other thing I could maybe suggest actually, just looking at this, is work on representing your products in a nice fashion. So you can either go with t-shirt representation, color sort of style, or some sort of like outfit based theme. Looking at this along here, these three t-shirts might be the same, but they don't sit nice together. The blue's loud next to the black. You don't feel like you're looking at two Ed Hardy tops. It just feels a slight bit chaotic. So I would say maybe work on grouping things together by product, maybe a little bit by color, or maybe some even like style inspo, giving people a feel of what they are actually looking at. Merchandise. Now, this person, I'm here for it. They've gone into a bit of clothes, but can we just take in the TN Air rug? I love when people take an idea of saying, I like fashion, but now I want to make something about the fact that I like fashion. I love TNs, but I'm not going to sell them because they're hard to source because of how rare they are. So I'm going to make a rug with TN Air on it and charge 96 for it. Fair play, man. You do you. So let's look at the products of what I can talk about. Now, these, I already know you haven't cleaned the phone that you are shooting these on. And you know why I know that? This glare that sits over them, where it's almost like condensation's built up within the actual lens that you're shooting on, because it's not clean. It's trying to focus on stuff behind all of the condensation, and it creates this strange ethereal like glow that, believe it or not, doesn't actually look good on the products. It looks bad. So that's what's happened there, and that's what you've done. So I would say just work on making sure that the camera you use is clean so that it has a better perspective on that. Also, just being a bit mindful of when you go for random items to change the background, because I think that there has to be a little bit of a streamline of consistency with the way that you show the difference in different backgrounds. I believe personally, as much as we like to go with the down-to-earth speaking, the relatability to people who probably buy, I would just keep it super official, you know. You can still work on being casual whilst being concise. And I think that like when you start to go clean center logo, people look at your store and maybe think that you're the same age as them because that's what they say. They might think they got leverage to ask for cheaper price, or they might just be cheeky in different ways. If people think you are legitimate vitty and you're like some proper cool store and you're like serious with all of this approach, then they probably will be serious with their offer if they were to make one on your product. That's my approach with that. I mean, you don't want people to walk all over you like the rugs you make. That is sat mental. What are the arms doing? I like this though. I think that overall, the white background is clean. I think that what you need to maybe work on is just the way that you have the conversation with the people in the description. I think that sometimes it's okay to be a little bit casual, but I just say be mindful of the casual narrative you portray through your description. And yeah, you've sold 197, 73 feedback, good ratios there. Have a little look at working on different perspectives with the arms. I don't like that look, but I can see what you're trying to do. It creates that motion, and it's also like, this is the bit where the material flicks up on the side because the item's not naturally meant to be positioned like that, but you just work on lining out the item where this bit sits invertedly, creating a raised material on the other side. Merchandise, I really like the name. I think that when I saw that first, I thought that was clever. I was like, that's not how you spell merchandise. And then I was like, Ah, merchandise. That's that, guys. I've done the stores that I'm going to do today. Don't worry, I've got loads more coming next week on the next week's one, but feel free to drop comments with your Depop, your Etsy, your Vintage, your eBay, your Shopify, whatever store you have. It doesn't even have to be clothes. It can be trainers, it can be books, electronics, whatever you buy and sell. Let me look at your aesthetic and give you a perspective on what I think you could do better from my standpoint of 12 years working very obsessively in an industry based on aesthetic and streetwear and vintage. My name's Spencer Lyon and I'm here to be the Depop detective or the vintage villain that's gonna come and check out your stores, give you an honest take from an outside perspective, and it comes from a good place because I wish that people were like this when I was building my store. And more importantly, I wish I listened to people when I was building my store because I had tinted glasses on and I was going my own direction. Feedback's good, guys, and I appreciate you for allowing me to have a little insight and share it with everybody of your stores. If you want to have a bit of an extended video on any of your stores, I do offer that as a sort of premium service. Feel free to get in touch with me through Instagram or just like on YouTube or wherever you're seeing this, and I can give you a bit of a quote with that. It's not as much as you think. Also, check out the Patreon. That's where I do 3 videos a month, £4.50 a month, and that is just more strategies, social media campaigns, and the ways to make your store look that extra mile better. Any likes, comments, subscribes are all appreciated. We're just going to keep going, making this content and hoping that it keeps going in the right way. So shout out to the YouTube algorithm, shout out to you lot for tuning in, and I will see you lot on the next one, yeah? Big up.